Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Mitch, the Yard Geek, and I've been busy meticulously developing my acreage, and I'm bringing you all along for the ride and showing you every single satisfying detail. Alright, well when we left off in the last episode, I had successfully turned my irrigation system on and found everything was working as expected, so my trees were finally getting watered. And of course, the weeds were growing rampant, so I took the trimmer to the ones up in the front of the yard, and in the back, well, I brought out the big guns and used Johnny to take care of those. Now at this point in the summer, all of my trees were looking pretty good, and the eco buffer had already shown some serious growth, which was great to see. Then I also had to get my hot tub moved from my old house out to the acreage, so I had somewhere to relax after a long day working out in the yard. Shortly after that, and winter was in full swing, which meant grabbing Johnny and the snow bucket and clearing snow out in the yard, which I can assure you is as fun as it looks. And that's exactly where I'm going to pick things up in this episode. The winter we had was definitely an abnormal one, as we got an absolute pile of snow. Everywhere you look around the yard, there's just tons and tons of snow, with 4-foot drifts in some places. And to make matters worse, it was especially cold, and that caused winter burn on a lot of my spruce trees, which is caused by frigid temperatures and the sun and or the wind drying out the needles. Then because the ground is frozen, they can't take in any more water, so they end up looking like this. I'm hopeful at this point though that they'll all recover and be okay, but I won't really know the full extent of the damage until all this snow melts, which it started to do. This is what things looked like April 10th of last year. As you can see, there's a fair bit of snow in the tree lines around the yard, but the back pasture also has quite a bit, as do my neighbors' yards, and that all started to melt pretty quick as we finally had a couple of warmer days. As we look around here, you can see that there's already a fair bit of water just sitting around the yard, which isn't all that surprising because the snow sort of holds it in place, given that the ground is completely frozen, though some of the water is able to carve out a path underneath the piles of snow and make its way to lower ground. Okay, well, I'll be honest with you guys, seeing all this water around the yard isn't making me too happy, especially seeing what's getting trapped beside the shop here, as it's almost going over the lane, so I had to take matters into my own hands and grabbed a sump pump, threw it in there, and started pumping the water out of the yard and into the ditch. Now, if sump pumps, melting water, and yard work really aren't your thing, then you should give the Nao robotic lawnmower by Segway a try. They're the sponsor of today's video, and I am really excited to try this thing. Now, I don't quite have grass in my yard yet, but my dad does, so let's go put this thing to work. Alright guys, well the setup for this thing is really easy. All I had to do was quickly drive it around the edge of the lawn to teach it where the boundaries were, and boom, it's good to go. Now I get to sit back and relax while it mows the lawn to perfection, which I'll of course take credit for. The Nao i-Series offers quick, wire-free setup, AI mapping, and fits into everyone's lawn no matter how complicated the layout is. The onboard visual fence enables Nao to proactively and smoothly avoid objects with its camera, so if you accidentally leave something on your lawn, you don't have to worry about it. Of course, you can control everything from the Nao app and schedule when you want your lawn cut. It'll go out, do the job, and return itself to its charging station when it's done. You don't even have to think about it. The Nao has revolutionized the lawn care industry and will give you more free time to do the things you love doing. It's easy to wash and clean, ultra low noise, and super easy to use. Check out this incredible robotic lawnmower by using the link at the top of the description, and you can be the envy of all your neighbors. So what'd you think, Dad?
Super cool. I think I want one.
See? Okay, now let's get back out to the acreage and check on the water situation. Now, thankfully, gravity is lending a helping hand too, and the water has already carved out a nice path through the front corner of the yard and is flowing into the ditch. Looking through the eco buffer here though, and it's pretty clear the spruce trees took a major hit this year, as nearly every one of them has some winter burn on them. Like I said though, I'm hoping they'll be okay, and same thing goes for all the other trees, though I don't have quite as much to worry about with the deciduous ones. Even though a bunch of these trees are sitting in water right now, it shouldn't really affect them because the ground is still frozen and they aren't awake yet, since spring just decided to show up today. I do have to say though that I'm surprised by how much it's melted in just one day, though there's still tons and tons of snow left to melt, and that definitely has me worried because tomorrow's forecast is for it to be significantly warmer than it was today. Seeing how much water is sitting around the yard is giving me useful information though. It can sometimes be hard to predict where the water will sit or where you might have a low spot, so I know for sure that I have to fix this area beside the shop, as there's really no reason why it can't naturally flow out to the ditch from here, and that would stop any of it spilling onto the reclaim. As for the front yard though, I don't think I'll ever be able to eliminate some water from sitting here, but I do think I can still improve things a little bit. Now, as we take a look at where all this water goes when it leaves the yard, it runs through the ditch, past my neighbor's house, and then into a culvert that takes it underneath the road. Only problem though is that the culvert was placed a little bit too high to be super effective. Water sort of has to build up a little bit in the ditch before it can actually get through it, but if you guys maybe noticed already, a path has been cut through the ditch so the water can actually flow and the culverts didn't just get ice dammed. So a big thanks goes out to my neighbor who did this about a week ago in preparation of this spring melt. Okay guys, well the next morning I had the drone up in the air once again to take a look at how the melt was progressing, and it was clear that it melted a bunch more overnight. On the side of the yard here, there's still a ton of snow that's yet to melt, and more little rivers have opened up back here too, including one from the pasture, but when we look at what's left to melt back here, there thankfully isn't a whole lot more coming. Looking over to my neighbor's yard, and it looks like he must have made a bit of a berm behind his shop to prevent water from getting in it, but it's also pretty close to his basement windows too, although I think based on where things are at right now, he'll probably be okay. Up by the septic field, things are starting to dry out a bit, which is good to see, but I'm not thrilled by how close the water has gotten to my house already. Seeing this makes me wonder why it's not draining out of here faster. Having what's become lakefront property definitely isn't what I want, but I'm at the mercy of Mother Nature right now. It's been astonishing to see how much snow has melted in the span of 24 hours, as we basically went from just above freezing to plus 22 in a day, which is highly unusual. Typically the snow melts pretty slow over the course of a few weeks, but I guess I shouldn't be surprised since the weather is getting more erratic everywhere nowadays. To answer the question about why all the water is sitting here right now, we need to go take a look downstream, if you will. So like I mentioned earlier, the water from the pasture comes in at the back corner of my yard, makes its way past the house up to the front corner, and then exits into the ditch. From there it goes past my neighbor's house to a culvert that takes it across the road, which you can see is pretty well operating at peak capacity here. Once it's across the road, it continues on past a couple more houses and through the culverts under their lanes, which you can see are also operating at peak capacity too. A little further down though, and this guy has it pretty bad too, as his entire front yard is a little too low and holds all this water. From here though, this is where things get interesting. There's another culvert under the road here, which again is letting as much water through as it possibly can, but it just can't keep up with what's coming at it. Once it's back across the road, it sort of just meanders its way through this currently empty lot, and I'm not sure if you can tell or not, but there's really not a lot of elevation change from my yard to this point, so this whole process is slowed down by that, but also the size of the culverts restrict the flow as well. After it snakes its way through this lot, it enters the backyard of someone in a neighboring subdivision and has essentially created a river right through his yard. Thankfully for him, he's set up his yard in such a way that this doesn't appear to create any issues for him, other than access to the other half of his yard, but it doesn't look like he's got anything stored over there anyways that it would be a problem. From here, it passes through yet another culvert, further restricting the flow, and then snakes its way through another yard in a nice tidy little river until it really opens up again and floods this guy's entire backyard, plus a couple of his neighbors too, before it looks like it finally makes its way out of the subdivision. Pretty crazy that there's so many people that have to deal with this, and that it looks like proper drainage maybe wasn't very thought through before these subdivisions were developed. Either way though, this was certainly a rare event, and there's enough space out here that it's really not causing anyone any issues. Thankfully, this ended up being the height of the melt right here, and the water started to recede away from my house into the evening. Over the next few days, it continued melting and draining out, and was pretty much all gone and evaporated away within a week. Winter wasn't quite done though, as we got a bunch of snow again a couple days after the melt was done, so we went from what I thought would be an early spring, right back to winter again overnight. Mother Nature can be pretty cruel sometimes, but spring is right around the corner, and that means a huge amount of work and progress is about to happen, some of which is going to be addressing a few of these areas where the water sat, like beside the shop, so stay tuned to the channel as things are only going to ramp up from here. Alright guys, well that is where I'm going to leave it for this episode. Thankfully everything turned out okay and the spring melt didn't flood the house, but it does have me thinking ahead and planning for what to do if that happens again, even though it's unlikely it will. But anyways, thanks for watching, and if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you smash the thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel, and maybe go check out the Nao because that thing is really cool. And yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next one.